Okay, so we are ready to glue all of these leaves together and get them ready to be assembled onto the stem. So I'm going to start with my smallest ones first, since we're not putting a wire in those. So it's these 4 sizes here are without a wire, and then the 3 larger ones will have a wire in the middle. So I'm just going to take my piece here and we're going to add just a very thin line of glue to the edge, and then stack that right on top and press it together. These really small ones are kind of tricky, so make sure you get it lined up first and then start pressing it down. They do kind of want to come apart because they are so small. Sometimes what you can do is use one of the pairs of tweezers. Like I have this one that's a kind of like a clamp type of tweezer, and you can actually just hold that tight for a second just so the glue will set once you get your pieces into place. So if you have a pair of tweezers that are like this, Cricut also has a set of tweezers that are similar, so you can use those as well. So just lining that up and then pressing it together just to make sure it gets really good and adhered and it's not going to come apart on me once I start cutting out the shape. And then do this one again, or the next one rather. There's a little bit of extra glue here, so I'm just going to wipe that off, redistribute it a little bit, and then again, just line up my piece. Make sure you still have that V miter for the leaf. Just kind of press that together. And just make sure that it sticks really good. I'm going to grab my tweezers again and just hold that together just for a couple seconds. And then I'm going to flip it around, do the same thing for the other end, just to make sure it gets really good and stuck together. And then I can set that down and let it dry. So we're just going to move on to the next size up and do the same thing. And you do kind of have to press that seam down pretty hard to get it to really stick. Sometimes with that Design Master spray, it makes it a little bit harder for the aliens to work. So just want to make sure that it really gets good and stuck down. Could use just a touch more glue right there. So I'm just going to take what I've got on my finger and move it. There we go. All right. And again, just stack that over top of it. Make sure it's lined up correctly. And then press it down. All right, so I'm going to finish the rest of this set off camera, and then I'll come back and then we'll do the wired set. So I'll be right back with you in just a moment. All right, so we are back and just finished up these sizes here. So the next step is to wire these leaves over here. So to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is measure the length of wire that I need to have sandwiched between my paper. So I'm using the template rather than this because this is too long. So if I put the wire all the way up here, I'm going to end up cutting through the wire when I cut out the leaf shape. So I want to make sure that my wire matches the leaf that I'm making. So using the template here and measuring it, I'm going to give myself a little bit of space here. So pull that off, and I'm actually going to measure that for you guys, and that's about 3/4 of an inch. And then you'll want to have an additional length of 3/4 of an inch. So you'll want to do 1.5 inch lengths of wire total for each leaf. So I'm going to cut 1.5 inches off this piece. And I actually have a few other wires already cut to size here. So we are going to get started on this. So again, we're going to mark that 3/4 inch of our wire. So when we dip it into the glue, that's how much glue we'll get. Just like that. And I'm going to take my leaf pieces, and I'm going to add some of this excess glue that I got on my wire here up towards the top, since we've got to get that piece covered. And then I'm actually going to go back and add just a tiny bit more glue here at the base of my leaf. I'll lay my wire down onto the glue. Grab my other piece here, lay that right on top, and stick that down. And again, like I was saying before, the Design Master spray kind of makes it a little bit hard for the glue to stick, as well as if it were just naked paper. So we really want to make sure you press down good into that glue to make sure it sticks. And you want to make sure that that wire is really sandwiched in there between the two layers of paper. And I'm pushing down quite hard onto the paper just to make sure that that seam is really stuck down. Set that down. And we're just going to keep going with that process. I'm going to go ahead and show you the next size up. So again, we're going to take our bit of wire, I'll use this shorter bit here, and then kind of measure based off of the template with a little bit of leeway here. So measure that, see what that length is. That's actually also about 3/4 of an inch. So we could still go with the same size that we had before. So 1.5 inches for that next size up as well. Okay, and then I need 2 more of that size. So I'm gonna grab one of my other wires here. And this is the 30 gauge wire, by the way. If you have 28 or even 26 gauge wire, that would work as well. I wouldn't go any higher than 26 gauge or any lower than that. Because if your wire gets too thick, then that's going to be a problem and you'll get some extra bulk on your stem that you don't really want. Okay, so I've got my 4 stems for that. I've got my other 3 for these, and then I'll go ahead and measure the size of wire that I need for this size as well. So again, just lay that right on the template, give myself a little bit of room, measure that, and that is 7/8 of an inch. So 7/8 plus another 3/4 is 1 5/8 inches. So these are just a tiny bit longer than the other ones. And we'll need 6 wires for that set. It's not quite long enough, so we'll get one more to get our last little piece here. All right, so the rest of these I'm going to go ahead and do off camera, and then we'll come back, cut out the shapes, and then we'll get to assemble the stem. Okay guys, so I am back, and in the interest of saving time, I cut out most of my leaf shapes already, but I am going to show how to cut these sizes that I haven't cut yet, so you get an idea of the process to get them cut out. So this small one is probably the biggest pain to cut out, but it can be done. You just have to be very slow with it and make sure that you're holding onto your pattern really tightly and things don't move around as you're cutting. So I'll hold this up, you can see that, and I'm going to trim off the bottom here first, and then I'm going to start going around my pattern. And I'm not doing a full cut all the way around because I would end up cutting into my fingers and my nails, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just kind of doing some smaller cuts, making my way around the shape. And if I see anything kind of hanging off or like angled in any weird way, I can go back and refine that shape just a little bit. So I've got 1/2 cut out, and then I'm going to flip it over and start at the point, and then just follow that curve as close as I can. And then once I get to the end here, I'm just going to cut off this little bit, and then I'll pull my pattern off and see if I need to do any extra refinement on the shape, get everything kind of rounded. Just like a little bit of a sharper edge there. Okay, so then we've got the smallest leaf cut out. We have 2 of those. And that's what it says on my number here. Get all my little bits and pieces out of the way. And then we're just going to keep going down the line. So this next one, I'm going to line up my pattern. Cut the bottom off. And then just follow around my template. These are a little bit easier to do because they don't have a wire in them. You don't have to worry about fighting with a wire to get these little ones cut out. And then again, just kind of double checking. It looks like there's a little bit of a rough edge here, so I'm going to try to smooth that out just a little bit. There we go. All right. So that's my 4th leaf of that set. Grab my next size, line it up, cut off the bottom, make sure it's lined up, cut off the bottom, and then just follow around the template, making cuts around. Okay, so that's that one. Last one without a wire. Again, just line up the pattern. Make sure it's lined up with that center line. Cut off your bottom. And then you can just follow around the curve of your pattern. Sometimes with this heavy crepe, you get these little kind of jagged edges. You can just cut those off when you see them. Okay, so that's that one. I kind of got ahead of myself with this set of wired leaves, so I only have 2 of the wired leaves to show. So we're going to start with the next size up. I'm going to line this up with the bottom that I'd already cut off. And then since this wire is so thin, I'm just going to knock that right out of the way so I can get up underneath the leaf and get that curve correct. Okay. And then move the wire right out of the way again and come back around. Trim that up. Okay, and just double check my shape here. It looks like I've got a little bit of a corner there. Okay, that's good. Move all my bits out of the way. So now I've got 6 of that size. I've already got 4 of these cut. So last one is the 6th one of this set. And again, just line this up with the center as well as the bottom that you already cut off. Knock this out of the way. Get up underneath the leaf so you can get that bottom curve. And then you can just continue around the shape. And I'm just going to move this back out of the way and finish my cut. Okay, then just double check my shape here, make any changes that I want to make. I do want to round that off just a little bit more. So take that and round that off. There we go. And then we've got all of our leaves cut out. So get all of my little tiny bits out of the way. I'm sorry, I'm a little OCD about that, but getting all of that out of the way right now. Okay, we got all of our shapes cut out. Now we're going to get our 26 gauge wire, make sure it's good and straight. And this is an 18-inch long piece of wire. We are going to keep it this length because the leaves are only going to go down to about maybe 11 or 12 inches. And then the rest is going to be just solid stem. So that way you can put that into your arrangement without having the leaves get all bent up and messed up when you put it into your vessel. So we are going to start wrapping the stem just a little bit, just to cover the end here. So I'm going to grab that little strip that I cut earlier. And we're going to wrap the stem. So I'm going to take a piece of this that's about maybe 3 inches long. And then I'm actually going to take this, it's a little bit too wide for what I'm wanting. So I'm going to kind of fold this up just a little bit, and I'm going to cut this down. So I get a thinner strip. So I'm just going to fold it and then cut straight across. So now I've got this really skinny strip of paper. All right, so now I'm going to take my tacky glue I'm going to put a thin line down my strip And then, just to make sure it's actually really good and coated, I'm going to just use my finger and kind of spread that glue out. Then I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to put it over the tip of my wire and then wrap it around. And I'm actually going to wrap this up and down just a little bit so I build kind of a rounded tip here. So that's going to be kind of like the little bud at the very end of your stem. And then I just took the rest of that paper and wrapped it the rest of the way down. So I'm just rolling this in my fingers while the glue is still wet so it gets the shape that I want. And that's really small, so I'm going to hold it up here so you can see that we've got this kind of rounded, like almost really small looking egg shape at the very tip there. All right, and then I'm going to take the other part of the skinny stem wrap that I have. I'm going to put glue on that, and then we're going to wrap down the stem as far as that'll get us. Okay, and again, just kind of taking my finger, spreading that glue out all the way down that piece. And then I'm going to pick it up very carefully. And start wrapping my stem where I left off with the previous piece. And like I said, we're just going to wrap all the way as far as that piece will get us. And then I'm just rolling it through in my fingers to make sure it's really stuck on. Okay, and that should give us a good base for our stem and our first few leaves here. So I'm going to take my first two leaves and I'm going to take my scissors and I'm actually going to cut just a tiny little notch. Like you can barely see what I'm doing here, but just like, I mean like super tiny. Let me see if I can grab this and see if you can actually see that. You might not be able to, but it's just a little tiny notch, like right in the center of that leaf. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other. And then I'm going to take a little bit of my tacky glue and put it right there where those notches are that I just cut. I take my stem and I'm going to go down probably about a 1/4 of an inch down from the base of this little bud here. And I'm going to stick my leaf on. And then directly across from it, I'm going to stick my other leaf on. So we're kind of sandwiching the stem in between the two leaves. So you can see like that. We're just going to hold that for a few seconds so the glue will tack down, and then I'm going to start pulling the leaves back just a little bit. So you can see it looks like that. And we're just going to wait for that glue to dry a little bit. So I'm going to set this down really gently and just let that set for a second. And then I'm going to take my next couple of sets of leaves here, and I'm going to do another little notch. At the base of each of these. And what this will do is when I pull the leaves back a little bit, once I have them glued on, it will help the leaves kind of hug around the wire. Okay, so again, just like a really super tiny little notch there. You can see that. Put a dot of glue. I'm actually just going to dot the glue on 2 of them for now. Okay, so I have, I'm going to bend this up again so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. So we have our leaves going this way. So the next set is going to go this way. So I'm going to take my leaves and I want to go down this time about, we'll go about 1/2 inch down. From where the first set of leaves were placed. I'll stick that on. Then directly across from it, stick the other on. And just kind of make sure that they're both at about the same height. Kind of press that onto the stem wire just a little bit. If it falls off, just stick it back right back where it was. Make sure it's lined up. It's just not wanting to stay stuck on there. Okay, so trying to get everything lined back up. Okay, there we go. All right, so we're just gonna stay with that and just keep that stuck. Hold that on there so it'll stick for a few seconds longer. And then I can start kind of bending this back a little bit. Okay, so straighten that out just a little bit. And it looks like I need to add some more stem wrap before I add the next row of leaves. So I'm going to set that down gently for just a moment. And I'm going to grab some more of my stem wrap and I'm still going to keep it thin, so this time I'm going to do maybe a 4-inch long strip. And again, we're going to cut this thinner. So I'm going to fold it up and then cut it in half long ways so we get 2 thin strips. And the reason I'm doing these thinner strips is to keep the bulk off of my stem for now, because the very end of the eucalyptus stem is really quite thin and it gets thicker as it goes down. So I don't want to add too much bulk at the top. But I do want to make sure that my stem is the right color. So we are wrapping the stem. So I'm going to, again, just do a thin line of glue all the way down this strip. Again, just take my finger, spread it out so the whole strip is covered. And then pick up right where we left off with the previous wrap. And then just start going down the stem. Making sure it gets covered all the way down. And again, I'm just going to kind of roll that through in my fingers to make sure that that wrap is secured on there really good. Okay, so now I can take my next row of this size and put that on. So again, now we're going to go back to our starting position. So we're going to have them alternate going this way and then this way. So I'm going to place that down. Make sure that's straight. And then stick the other one down right top of that. Hold it for a few seconds so the glue can set just a little bit. Okay, looks like that one's sticking better. So I'm going to start pulling this back, flip it around, pull the other one back. So we have something like that. And this excess of glue will dry clear, so it's fine if it's a little globby at the moment. So one thing I like about this 26 gauge wire is that it is, or I'm sorry, 24 gauge wire, is that it's thick enough for the stem, but it's also flexible enough so you can get some really interesting shapes with it once it's all done. Okay, and the next step is cutting the little notches next size up. Okay. And then we're just going to keep going with this. So we're going to go back this way. So we're going to place our leaf, and I want to keep the spacing so far about 1/2 inch between each leaf. You can go a little bit over, but we want to keep the spacing up towards the top about the same for each step we go down. Okay, so that's good and stuck, or at least a little bit. And then take this one, stick it here. Hold those together up against the wire for just a couple seconds. So the main reason I'm doing these without wire for these smaller leaves is that trying to glue the little tiny leaves with a wire is just so fiddly, and you don't really need it. With leaves this small, they will stay pretty sturdy without having a wire in them. So it's not necessary to have these little bitty ones wired. So again, we're just gonna make sure it's stuck and then kind of pull them back. They'll kind of sit flat across from each other. We may have to let that sit for just a minute for the glue to dry some more before we add more leaves. Pull that down a little bit, pull this down a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to set these back over here so I know where I'm at. But we do want to give those a little bit more time to dry. So in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and cut my little notches on this set of leaves. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my pliers, and we're actually going to start bending these wires just to get them prepped. So I'm going to just take my little flat needle nose pliers here, and I'm going to hold the leaf in those pliers, and then I'm going to bend my wire straight down. So it'll be at a 90-degree angle from the leaf. And I'm doing this because I want the wire to bend right at the very base of that leaf and not stick out from it. Because you could do this by hand, but sometimes you end up with like extra spacing, so it sticks out from the stem, and that's not what you want. You want it to be as flush as you can get it. So it is really good to have this these needle nose pliers, so you can get this as flush to the base of the leaf as you possibly can. So it looks like one of my leaves is starting to come apart here, so I'm just going to take a tiny bit of Aleene's, spread that out really thin, because I don't want my paper to get too wet and then become disformed. So just a little tiny bit of Aleene's, and then stick that back together and then let that dry. Just like that. All right, so this should be mostly dry now. It looks like it's getting there. So we can try adding the rest of our leaves. I'm gonna add glue to 4 leaves here. And hopefully I can work quickly enough to get this done. So we will try to do that. Move that up just a little bit. Put that on. Grab this one. Tack that one on as well. Hold it in place. And then maybe try to see if I can add this other set here. So put that on and put that one on. Hold that for just a second. Okay, while those are setting for just a minute, I'm going to take my stem wrap, the other half of that stem wrap, glue that, and then wrap it down. Spread out my glue. And where I added this last set of leaves is right where that stem wrap ended. So I'm gonna go right up underneath these leaves here and start wrapping again. And go all the way down, just like that. Had a little bit of extra glue there, so I'm just kind of twisting that in my fingers to smooth everything out some. Okay, so now I can hold that one for just a second and start trying to pull these back just a little bit. And the same thing with these. Just kind of start to pull those back just a little bit, or a lot. So they will start to try to lay a little bit more flat as we go down. So when I pull these back, I'm just kind of holding them in place for a couple seconds. So they'll kind of relax into that kind of flat position I want them to be in. I'm going to do that one more too. Okay, so set that down, let that kind of chill for just a little bit. Then we'll start adding some more glue. Actually, what I'm gonna do at this point is I'm going to add another layer of paper, because this is where the stem's really gonna start getting thicker. So I want to use the full width of this strip here. I don't need it that long though yet, so I'm gonna cut that down just a little bit. That's gonna give me a little over a 4-inch piece. Measurement's not super important at this point. Okay, so I'm just kind of spread that out on the very end here. And I'm going to go back up under these leaves and start wrapping again. Okay, so you'll see that it's starting to get a little bit thicker now. Okay, so actually gonna add just a touch more glue to these leaves here. It's started to dry on me. All right. So again, actually at this point, I'm gonna go down about 3/4 of an inch from the last row. So from there to there. So I'm gonna add my leaf here. And then put my other one here. And then again, we're just going to hold that for a moment. Make sure that gets stuck on. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do while that's drying is I'm going to give this about a 2.5 inch piece of strip for my stem wrap. And that's what's going to go on once I start adding the wired pieces. Okay, so that seems pretty well stuck, so I'm going to pull these back. Just like that, and let it dry like that. All right, so I'm going to take these two, and I'm actually going to run glue down the wires. And then again, we're going to go down about 3/4 of an inch, so about right here is where I'm going to place my leaf. So I'm going to stick my wire there. Just kind of line that up with the stem. Wants to roll in your hand, so just kind of be mindful of that and make sure that when you're holding the leaf wire onto the stem wire that your leaf is going the right direction. So just kind of hold that on for just a moment so it gets stuck, and then flip it around and then add your other leaf directly across from it. And then you can just kind of press and hold both wires at the same time. And then you're going to have both of these leaves go straight out. And you can even add like just a tiny little curl just by bending the wire at the very tip of your leaf, just like that. Okay, so those are pretty well stuck. I am seeing that this leaf is kind of starting to try to come apart as well. So one of the things with the paste with this paper is if you don't work with it fast enough by like cutting your shapes out and all that, the paper does kind of have a tendency to come apart on you. This particular sheet that I was working with was from the previous one that I did, so it was probably dry with that paste for about 2 or 3 days before I started on this one, which is why these are kind of falling apart. So it's best if you paste the paper, let it dry for a couple of hours, and then start cutting your shapes. I wouldn't give it more than 12 or 24 hours before you start cutting things out. So, lessons learned. So, again, just take this stem wrap right underneath your leaves and wrap it around and down. Okay, and then just kind of smash that together, roll it in your fingers a little bit. Okay, and you can see now by even just having those wires in there, the stem's going to get thicker. So, next one, actually, I'm gonna grab some more of my stem wrap, just so I have that in view, and then we're going to do the next one. Okay, press that down. Add glue. Place it directly across. Press it right up against your stem wire. Make sure it's good stuck. Make sure your leaves are facing the right way. Sometimes they will do something like that and get wonky, so you want to make sure you straighten them out before your glue dries. Okay, and then you're just going to keep repeating that process until you have finished your stem. So you'll end up with a piece similar to this. Okay, so this is looking pretty straight right now. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to give it a little bit of a bend. So this, I'm just going to take and kind of bend the top of it just a little bit one way, and then kind of bend this another way. Just bend that back just a little bit here, and then kind of rotate it, and then, you know, add some little bends towards the top of your stem. Then you can even bend it a little bit towards the bottom as well. I wouldn't do too much shaping because they don't go super crazy with the shape, but they sometimes do kind of have this like droopy quality sometimes, or like they grow it out in weird ways. So you just want to give it a little bit of shape, and that will get you your stem. So then you can go in and refine these wired leaves, because they do end up looking very flat once you have them attached. So you can kind of go in and like bend them up and like bend maybe a couple of them down, just kind of at the tips to give it a little bit more shape. The eucalyptus leaves are normally kind of straight out flat leaves anyway, but sometimes they do have this little like kind of little kick up or kick down and that just gives it a little bit more of a lifelike touch to it. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions or run into any problems, DM me or leave me a comment, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I will add a pattern in the description so you can cut these little pieces out with your Cricut if you have them, or if you don't, I will also have a PDF so you can cut those out by hand. I would recommend using the templates because getting the size and shape of these leaves with freehand cutting is very difficult. So just keep that in mind, and I will see you next time. Have a great day.